Hello, athletes. We know that nutrition is considered as one of the core disciplines in every athlete's journey. We are going to talk about nitric oxide, commonly known by athletes as beetroot or beetroot juice. Nitrates, the molecule found in beet, gained popularity among strength athletes, endurance athletes, everyday fitness enthusiasts as a supplement to improve ability to perform, recover faster by speeding blood flow to muscles. It has strong evidence to support its use for boosting exercise performance. So, what your body can do with nitrates should greatly interest you as an athlete for your performance goal. That's why today we are going to explain the science behind nitric oxide and how it can benefit your athletic goals. As per usual, Jess is going to build the foundation for our listeners about nitric oxide. So I'm handing over to Jess for the 101 class. Let's start.
Yay! Well, hello, everyone. So scientists discovered the connection between nitric oxide and blood flow in like the last few decades. In the presence of nitric oxide, blood vessels relax, which improves blood flow and reduces blood pressure. Nitric oxide, it's a gas that's naturally produced in our bodies, and our body produces it in three ways. One, it's secreted by the cells that line the endothelium of our blood vessels. It's also converted by oral bacteria um, from your intake of nitrates from the food you eat. So your foods, as you digest it, your oral bacteria help produce nitric oxide. And also, it's created by the bacteria on our skin when we're exposed to enough sunlight. And I just want to kind of put this out there that nitric oxide should not be confused with nitrous oxide, which is the gas that dentists use to help patients calm down. So we're talking about a slightly different molecule, but I wanted to make that distinction here just kind of before we got further into
That's good. I'm sure
this.
people would be thinking, I would be thinking, is it the same thing? But it's
Yeah,
not.
it's not, but I mean, the words are super similar, so I can understand the confusion. So we're definitely two different molecules that we're talking about, and this nitric oxide is not going to put you to sleep.
Yeah.
So, um, so from an athletic perspective, nitric oxide's primary role is to regulate oxygen delivery to muscles. Because of its effect of nitric oxide, it's commonly found in many pre-workouts that promise to boost strength and endurance. Because nitric oxide is a gas, it rapidly diffuses across our cells. So it's involved in many physiological processes besides relaxing blood vessels. It also acts as an antioxidant to neutralize harmful free radicals. It promotes the formation of glutathione, and glutathione is our master antioxidant. It supports the immune system to help fight off infections. It also helps facilitate the messages between nerve cells, contributing to improved memory, learning capacities, better sleep, and a more positive mood. There's also various ways by which nitric oxide supplements are believed to help improve athletic performance. And since this is about athletic performance, I thought we would dive into this one just a little bit. So, or focus on this one. So, nitric oxide, as we talked about, by relaxing the blood vessels and allowing lower blood pressure, it is a vasodilator. It enhances blood flow to muscles, particularly fast twitch muscle fibers. Better blood flow translates into lower blood pressure and decreases the demand on your heart and skeletal muscles. So, better blood flow also supports your muscles' ability to contract and transport metabolic byproducts such as lactic acid out of your muscles. Other studies also indicate that oxygen demand is lowered by nitric oxide supplementation. Nitrates also improve the efficiency of ATP production by our mitochondria. And if you remember from science class or biology 101, ATP is our energy source. And lastly, it's been proposed that dietary nitrates enhance skeletal muscle function through the modulation of intercellular calcium concentrations. So with that, I hope you kind of understand a little bit more of the importance of nitric oxide in your body. So Nilham, I want to talk about how does this translate into study results? Are there interesting studies out there on athletes that support the effects for these statements and athletic performance?
Yeah, definitely. There are many studies supporting that. I would like to share few ones, and there is a reason why the International Olympic Committee recommends as a trusted supplement or resource for athletic performance. So I wanted to start with one interesting study. There are shots of beet juice that are great resources of nitrates, and just a shot of beet juice helped free divers hold their breath for a half minute longer than usual. This is an extremely increased performance, in my opinion, and for people who have trained and spent years trying to increase their breath hold is a huge benefit. So that's one study that is supporting nitrates and its benefits on performance. And another study showed that, again, a beet juice derived nitrates helped cyclists perform at the same intensity while consuming 90% less oxygen. So it helps with the use of oxygen when compared to the placebo group. The riders then cranked up the intensity, and those who took the beet nitrates extended their time to exhaustion from an average of 9.33 minutes to 11.15 seconds. Sorry.
Wow.
So this translates into greater endurance for endurance athletes with less oxygen costs. So it's good for exercise economy, in my opinion. And this is quite handy when you're looking for that slight edge to bring out your best performance in competition and training. One of the things I wanted to share is when we look at the studies, usually they are designed in a way to show performance benefits in low or moderately fit and older athletes experiencing performance improvements. We looked into the evidence because we knew that elite athletes may be listening to us, or highly trained athletes may be listening to us. Some evidence show that effects may be weaker for elite athletes, but we found a recent study that even elite athletes can experience the benefits of nitrates as long as they consume more. We're going to talk about the dosage in a while. So that's important to note out. And another study finding that is interesting to me is nitric oxide may even improve adaptation to altitude. We know athletes are going to high altitude camps time to time. So if you're an endurance athlete planning in a high altitude camp, for example, or just a trip there as an athlete in a high altitude location, it will be wise to consider increasing your nitric oxide level, because low oxygen levels in high altitude reduces the nitric oxide levels initially. And studies show that if you consume dietary nitrates, for instance, red beets, we are going to come into the resources in a while, or if you take nitric oxide supplementation, it can improve your body's adaptation to altitude camp by keeping nitric oxide levels from declining. So that also has this kind of effect. Yeah. So there are some good evidence base for why we recommend athletes to maintain their nitric oxide levels and get supplements if and when needed. But there is also a physiological background on why we need nitrates for both health and performance reasons. Because, for example, in altitude, nitric oxide levels decline. There are other controllable reasons, it was a hard word, for why nitric oxide levels decline. And for example, firstly and foremost, if you are lacking dietary nitrate intake, you're going to have lower levels. If you do excessive physical and mental stress, this includes exercising, your levels going to drop. If you are low on stomach acid, if you're an imbalanced mouth bacteria, and if you take anti-inflammatory medicines, or you have any arterial damage in your veins, you're going to have lower levels of nitric oxide. Also, another reason why nitric oxide levels decrease is that it decline with age. By the age of 40, your body will produce half of the nitric oxide it did with the age of 20. And By the time you reach 70, you'll be capable of producing only 25% of the nitric oxide it needs. So
Wow.
the need is there, and I think it's a huge reason why nitric oxide is part of performance and health considerations for all the population.
Yeah.
Aging is one factor we cannot control, although we can age in a nice way. That's what we are trying to do. And aging is the greatest threat to your nitric oxide level. And we need to understand whether an athlete is low on nitric oxide, because if you're going to supplement it, and there are reasons behind it. So let's figure out if you could benefit from additional supplementation, or if you need to supplement yourself, either food or through other means. But we have to understand the baseline first. So I wonder, Jess, what is the way to understand the nitric oxide levels? Is there a test? Can athletes find out in a practical way? What are your takes on that?
Yeah, so until recently, there actually really wasn't an easy, accessible way to kind of measure nitric oxide. There was a test for a long time, or there still exists a test that it's pretty costly blood work, and it's kind of a complicated procedure called a mediated dilation, which indirectly predicts nitric oxide levels by measuring your blood flow in an arm, or your blood flow rate in your arm after applying pressure. But thankfully, due to technology advances and the importance of understanding of nitric oxide, there is now ways to measure nitric oxide any level, anywhere, and it only requires now a simple little test strip and a drop of saliva. So it's literally like you buy like a little test strip, put it on your tongue, and measure the color. It's a color indicator, so you look at it, and depending on how bright, the ones I've seen and used are usually indicate you usually use pink, and so the brighter the pink, the more nitric oxide. The closer to white,
Mhm.
the less nitric oxide. So it's a really easy way, really simple test. But you can also do, I would say, one thing is also just like a subjective questions. So there's some
Mhm.
questions I have found that if you answer yes to two or more of these questions, there is a very high likelihood that your nitric oxide is low. So
Mhm.
if you're over 40, if you rarely or occasionally only eat green vegetables or red beets, if you train at high levels, so basically that kind of number is about 10 hours a week, if your hormones are in balance, if you use anti-inflammatory medicines, if you use antacids, or if you frequently use mouthwash. If you answer yes to any of those, or two of those, you're probably low on nitric oxide. Two other questions that you could look at is, do you have circulation problems such as like high blood pressure or fluid retention? Or you have an abnormally high CRP, which is an inflammatory marker, or autoimmune disease. So any of these questions I found historically, um, if you answered yes to two of them, you're probably low in nitric oxide.
Mhm.
But in general, if you're over the age of 40 and an endurance athlete, most often you don't have optimal nitric oxide levels. It's always helpful to maintain, I feel like, a subjective awareness of any improvement in the way you feel or perform. So these salivary test strips provide an objective foundation in determining improvement of your nitric oxide levels. And they're really inexpensive, so you can buy a pack of them and test, before you start supplementation or changing in your diet, after you change your diet, if you add supplements. So I like it as a way to kind of monitor changes, and I feel like it serves as a tool to allow you to assess, are these dietary lifestyle changes in your intensity, stress, or supplements, are they actually helping?
Mhm.
So now that you know the importance of nitric oxide for your health and your performance and how to gauge it, the big question I think we need to kind of dive into is, how do we improve our nitric oxide levels, since many of those listening to us are athletes. They may be having some inflammation, or some of them may be over 40. So Nilham, Can you kind of dive into a little bit more of how can we improve our nitric oxide levels? So
Sure,
practical approaches.
sure, yes. So we talk about nitric oxide being produced by bacteria in our mouth, or we get sun and our body produces it more. It's difficult. It's more difficult to affect the behavior of bacteria in our mouth or enhance the creation of nitric oxide from getting through sun exposure on our skin. So usually, and the most effective proven method is to increase your nitric oxide levels using dietary nitrates, so food, or getting supplements when needed. You will hear from every athlete health support team. This includes us, as the food first approach is a foundational step. So if you're interested in boosting your nitric oxide levels coming from dietary nitrates, it's good to consider adding nitrate-rich whole foods, functional foods to your diet. So what are these? Leafy greens. This can be rucola, arugula, it's called in some of the countries. Red leaf spinach and celery have some of the highest concentration of nitrates. It's used as beetroot juice mostly, but these leafy greens also has nitrates in it. It's important to consume. Watermelon juice is another source of increasing nitric oxide levels in your bodies. As it is rich in citrulline, it's an amino acid that is used in our body to produce nitric oxide. We'll tap into that amino acids shortly. Then, of course, the most known, red beets. They can be found in, of course, powder or liquid forms as well. They offer the largest amount of dietary nitrates per gram and has the highest bioavailability. What does this mean? Your body absorbs a higher percentage of nitrates in getting from beets. You can either add fresh beet or beetroot juice into a smoothie in the morning. It's a fulfilling, tasty way to start your day. It has plenty of other positive benefits. Beets doesn't only have nitrates in it. It has a lot of fiber. It has calcium, magnesium, vitamin C, and a whopping more than 400 milligrams of potassium. So these are really good for your health and your performance as well. We have a side note because this happened to me too. I'm gonna make sure nobody experiences it. I'm sure some people will feel the same.
Yeah.
When you eat beets, yes, it happened to me and I freaked out, but please don't freak out when you eat beets. Your urine and stool is going to turn into red. So
Yes.
that's a sign because coming from the beet juice or beets. So don't freak out. It's normal.
Yeah.
And there is one
Save
fact.
somebody a trip to the ER, hopefully,
Exactly.
from going to the ER.
Please don't, unless you have a health condition. That's red beets. That's why it's like a unicorn pea. Yeah. Anyway, some of our listeners may have heard about nitrates being a risky thing to stay away from, especially when they are used in processed meats as a preservative. They are considered to be bad for your long-term health, but we understand this problem isn't nitrates. The cooking and processing methods are the underlying causes of concern about nitrates. So synthetic nitrates added to meats as preservatives that are grilled are different from nitrates that occur naturally in fresh vegetables. So they are not the same things. So the nitrates that are bad for the health is usually synthetic and they are used as preservatives in meat. So just good to differentiate that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up. So I bet listeners would be asking whether they can get enough nitric oxide through food alone for the performance enhancing benefits. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, we said food first, and the green leafy vegetables, beetroot are great functional foods that offer slight improvements in oxygen uptake and muscle efficiency. So there is a therapeutic effect or ergogenic effect coming from these resources. But as we age, we need more, and our body is less efficient in the conversion, in the absorption. So supplementation may be beneficial. And there are other reasons why nitric oxides decline. or there may be dietary choices. So supplementation sometimes come handy. So I can say that sometimes food alone is not sufficient.
Yes. Or some people don't like specific
Yeah,
foods like beets, because I will tell
exactly.
you this slight little side story. When I was a child, we had to
Hmm.
eat what was on our plate, the vegetables, and my
Hmm.
dad boiled beets one night and
Hmm.
didn't put any like seasoning on them. And my little brother sat at the table for like 3 hours because he refused to eat them. Little did my dad know that I fed them to the dog because I did not like them either. But I have now grown into liking beets roasted, but I don't know if I could eat boiled beets. So,
Yeah.
but beetroot juice is different. So I guess a question I get from patients, and
Mhm.
kind of always curious myself, like, how much do I need to eat? Is it
Yeah.
like one beet? How much beetroot juice? Like, so
Yeah.
if I eat 5 beets, is that enough? Or do I have to eat them every day? Like, kind of, can you break down a little bit
Mhm.
as to like how much do we need?
Sure. Well, I looked into the studies myself just to give a proper advice to our listeners. And there is one study that showed half a liter daily beetroot juice for 15 days, consecutive days, increased nitric oxide levels. So half a liter is a good amount that gives you the ergogenic effect. And we've seen that nitric oxide levels increased 2.5 hours after the beetroot juice ingestion in
Okay.
these athletes. So it's good to consume 2-3 hours before your exercise if you would like to get the benefits. Either half a liter, or there are also other resources. So like a one shot or a scoop of powder is good if it gives 350 or 500 milligrams of nitrates in it. So this is like if you're drinking half a liter, and aim for 350, 500 milligrams if you are using some sort of supplementation of nitrates. And the study says that if athletes would like to benefit from the full spectrum of performance enhancing effects of nitric oxide, it recommends use of 15 consecutive days.
Okay.
And I was also asked about whether athletes can eat beets instead of drinking beetroot juice, or in your case, for example, roasting it. I don't like the taste, so that sometimes I choose to eat roasted, or they don't. Sometimes athletes cannot find or squeeze beets as well, so that's a case. So they can eat beets instead of beet juice, but we know that beet juice has a higher concentration
Okay.
of nitrates. So maybe you need to eat a little bit more. And you mentioned this before, just I recommend athletes not to rinse with an antibacterial mouthwash or take an antacid medicine when they consume beetroot or juice, because it may decrease the amount of nitric oxide produces. So you just don't kill the process by using antacids or mouthwash.
Yeah.
We said food first, Jess. So here is the food first approach, but then supplements come next because sometimes they may be needed. So what about nitric oxide supplementation?
Yeah. So I feel like you talking about the spacing, like there's so many people when they take pre-work, like you see it mostly, I feel like you see a lot of people take it as pre-workout. So, 20, 30 minutes before, but the fact of highlighting that it needs to be about 2 to 3 hours before, I think is really important to our listeners, is that you may need a longer amount of time than like say caffeine that we've talked about, which starts to work relatively quickly, like 15 to 30 minutes. This is going to take a longer amount of time. So I find that really super helpful and interesting.
Mhm.
But I do think, as we talk about supplements, there is there is kind of like a catch. And that when you take a supplement and it says it contains nitric oxide, that is truly kind of like a scam. Um, because these you can't actually have nitric oxide because it's only a gas. So what we're talking, I think it's good marketing,
Yeah.
as we've talked about in previous episodes, and we always will probably talk to in every episode we talk about supplements, is the supplement market is definitely really good at marketing and trying to grab people and their purchasing. So really understanding what we're looking at. So I was going to dive in a little bit about why supplements don't truly contain nitric oxide. Instead, they contain the amino acids L-arginine and L-citrulline. L-arginine is basically a conditionally essential amino acid, which means it's only needed to be consumed under certain conditions. And many of those conditions are the ones we listed above in conditions that decrease nitric oxide. L-arginine directly produces nitric oxide through a process called the L-arginine nitric oxide pathway. And L-arginine in general is considered safe when taking up to 30 grams daily. But I do have to kind of let people know there may be some digestive symptoms, even in low doses of like 10 grams. So just kind of be aware if you start taking a pre-workout and start noticing digestive symptoms, you may want to look at how much L-arginine is in there. It can cause some issues. The other amino acid that is in pre-workouts is called L-citrulline. It is a dispensable amino acid, meaning our body can make all that it needs. And when L-arginine is converted to nitric oxide, L-citrulline is produced as a byproduct. And then L-citrulline is recycled back to L-arginine and used to increase our natural body's production of nitric oxide. So you can kind of see how these two work together. So in fact, L-citrulline increases levels of L-arginine in our body more than actually supplementing with L-arginine itself does. So this is because a large percentage of the L-arginine is actually broken down in our GI tract before it reaches our bloodstream. So this is why you'll see both products in supplements, and you may want to make sure that you have L-citrulline and L-arginine versus just L-arginine by itself. L-citrulline is considered relatively safe, and there is a low risk of side effects even at really high doses.
Well, that's interesting to use this as a combination because how L-arginine is breaking down in our body. So that's a good point. When athletes are looking for a pre-workout, they should make sure that this is provided in combination. And you said they are considered relatively safe. It's good to know. But are there any other risks that athletes should be aware of, Jess?
Yeah, I think athletes should be also kind of aware of taking basically the uncontrolled use or the risk of taking supplements that you don't know um, contamination, or there could even be large amounts of nitric oxide or nitric salts and cause some toxicity at really high doses. So making sure that you choose a supplement that is third-party tested or certified so that you know exactly what you're getting and there's nothing else included in that supplement that's not on the label, and that what's on the label is actually what's in the supplement. Obviously, all supplements come with some amount of risk, and nitric oxide is no exception. You should be aware whenever ingredients of a supplement claim, like I said, to deliver the same results as a substance your body already provides. Obviously, we talked about how nitric oxide can boost endurance, strength, power, and stamina. There is a chance that some supplements could contain large amounts of other ingredients, maybe large amounts of caffeine or other banned substances or substances that don't have the data behind it. So again, always looking for quality supplements that are third-party tested. We always recommend that you do your research on the supplement you're using and your manufacturer. And you can always consult your sports pharmacist, as we are here to support you and your safety. But as just a side note, we want to add in on supplement safety. Some athletes may not prefer nitric-rich foods due to allergies, or, for example, my brother who dislikes beets altogether. And there's also some people who just don't want to take supplements. And I think this is a fun conversation as to ways that you can actually naturally increase your nitric oxide level. So people are always looking at ways to do stuff without supplements, without adding anything else to their regimen. So I think these are some interesting skills we can provide our listeners on ways to increase nitric oxide naturally. So Nilhan, you want to kind of dive into some of the skills?
Yeah.
you could be using?
Yes, well, it's gonna sound like we are going back to our recovery episode, but again, how important is rest and recovery?
Yes.
So, number one is getting adequate rest and recovery. It's very powerful to get enough, like 7.5, 8 hours of sleep for nitric oxide production and maintenance of its level. Also, in terms of getting enough rest other than sleep, try to take time out for yourself each day. I listen to calm music, sometimes watch a show, Friends, for example, just one episode to have a small laugh, read a book, going for a walk, and just play. And if you're a spiritual person, you can dedicate a portion of each of your day to meditation or practicing your faith. It's just 5 to 10 minutes of silence or just having time for yourself. It's going to positively impact your overall health and performance. And nitric oxide production is one of the results of that. Also, breathing through your nose is important because our sinuses produce nitric oxide in our nose. When you breathe, and as air travels from our nose into lungs, a portion of the available nitric oxide gas is used for bronchial vasodilator. So it just relaxes your lungs so that you can breathe better. This process speeds up oxygen delivery and promotes its antibacterial activity as well. When you breathe from our nose, is especially useful during physical activity when the nitric oxide production is amplified. So try to breathe through your nose. This is also an important practice for athletes. An interesting one, you can try humming. I'm gonna show or just make an example of how it's done in a while. When you hum, it forces you to breathe through your nose. That's what we just mentioned for the nitric oxide production. The added vibration of the hum in the sinus cavity in our nose or in our mouth or in our facial bones or exponential, it adds an exponential increase in nitric oxide production up to 15 times more than nasal breathing alone. So this is basically an increase or upgrade of nitric oxide production in addition to breathing from nose. Is an ancient practice. Now it's backed by science. And the ancient practice is called Brahmari Pranayama, or we can call it bumblebee breathe. You can check it out, but how you do is basically you inhale from your nose, and in the exhale, you seal your lips, and slow and controlled exhale gives a hum sound like a bee. So, that's how I do. I do
Sounds
it.
just like a bee.
Exactly, right? That's why it's called a bumblebee. I'm a small bee, maybe not a
You baby
bumble one,
bee.
but baby bee. That was the baby bee one. Fun part is that you can play around with the pitch of the hum. So deeper and lower body versus higher pitch. So you can play it around, and depending on the environment you are in, if you have the space to do it. If you repeat it 3 times, inhale in between each sequence. This is how it's going to help with your nitric oxide production, and it's also a good recovery tool in my opinion. Also, if you can close other senses like placing thumbs over your ears, closing your eyes with your hands, covering your eyes, it can help you to focus the sound and vibration more. So if you just cut off the other senses, the vibration is going to feel more and more. There are additional benefits. You can practice with your kids. It's a calming breathing technique. Anyone experiencing excess stress, for example, post-exercise recovery tool. If you have any respiratory congestion, it's a feel-good breathing technique, and it's soothing for heart and the gut. So I just wanted to hum now. It's super easy. But also we can benefit from seeking to a yoga instructor. This is beyond our expertise, but check out resources for understanding it. Are there any other tips and tricks, Jess, other than humming? I am sure you enjoy humming too, but are there other tips for athletes who wants to improve the nitric oxide levels, alternative ways?
Yeah. So I think there's two more that come to my mind. Is one is And we've talked about this before on episodes about getting sleep, but making sure you get exposure to sunlight. So sunlight
Mhm.
activates the beneficial bacteria on our skin, triggering the production of vitamin D, and vitamin D helps drive nitric oxide production. So full body sunlight exposure is sometimes as we get into winter or, we had rainy days the last couple of days here in Florida, um, it may not be practical. So making sure that you do assess your vitamin D levels and making sure that those are optimal and supplement if necessary. But morning exposure to sunlight not only helps activate the bacteria on your skin to make vitamin D, it improves our mood and our sleep and our recovery, but we can now add to the list of it improves nitric oxide production. So
Mhm.
morning sunlight all around. But this one I found really intriguing, and we've
Mhm.
alluded to it a few times in the previous earlier in this episode about mouth and the bacteria in your mouth and using antiseptic mouthwashes. So effectively converting dietary nitrates to nitric oxide requires a special bacteria in your mouth to do this conversion. And we cannot produce nitric oxide from nitrates that are in our food without this bacteria. So by using antiseptic mouthwashes, we reduce this essential bacteria so we don't produce the nitric oxide. So I found that really interesting, and it was pointed out to by my dental hygienist. We were talking about using mouthwash, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Second part of that is also using or avoiding antacids. So our body also requires a high level of digestive enzymes in our stomach to convert the nitrates to nitric oxide. So if you use antacids or antacid lowering medications, you suppress the production of stomach acid, which interferes with nitric oxide production. So I found both of those just, little
Interesting.
tidbits. I feel like throughout the whole episode, there's all these different little ways to help increase nitric oxide production. We can't slow the aging process, but we can help support our body overall,
Yeah.
and increase and allowing us to increase the production a little bit more. What are your thoughts,
Yeah.
Nilhan?
Yeah, the good thing about nitric oxide is something that is already available in our body. So
Yeah.
it's not an entire supplement that you are using that is not available in your body. So if it's a way, either you optimize it or you just know that over time it's going to decrease in your body. So when you need it, uh, you maintain, but when you need it, you supplement with it. It's an essential molecule required for overall health and athletic performance. I'm sure with the studies and the 101 we shared, it helped build the foundation so that everybody, our listeners, understand why it's important. And then it's important to achieve and maintain your optimal levels of nitric oxide in your body for various reasons. We shared some studies supporting the helpful benefits. And again, in this episode, we covered how it works in your body, how it supports your athletic performance. We suggested dietary ways or supplementary ways or alternative ways to boost your nitric oxide levels in your body. So by this time, I'm sure you understand that it's not just beetroot juice molecule, but it's beyond. And you can also try sun exposure or humming, which we really love, both of us, Jess.
Yep.
That is additional considerations when you don't want to supplement. And we hope that at the end of this episode, you become a rational user of nitrates, and it can help with your achieving your athletic goals.
Yeah, I definitely second all of what you said, and I hope everyone found this episode super helpful. And as sports pharmacists, our mission is to provide you with accurate and evidence-based information to optimize your health and performance. When it comes to your health and well-being choices, consult your physician or pharmacist, prioritize safety, and always make informed decisions. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to sharing more valuable scientific and actionable insights on our next episode. Thank you.